Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Friday Friends. It is Friday, October 23rd, and I am very excited to have as my guest today Secretary of State Nellie Gorbea. As many of you know, Friday Friends is a show that RA Elder Info puts on. Every Friday at 9 a.m. we live stream. RA Elder Info is one of the most comprehensive resources for seniors, caregivers, and professionals here in Rhode Island. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and we are dependent on our sponsors and our donors and our community members who really want to support empowered aging. I wanted to bring to your attention today, for the month of October, it is called Residents' Rights Month. And that is the month where we recognize that individuals who reside in nursing homes and assisted living facilities are entitled to all the same rights as you and I in the community. So right to free speech, right to associate with those that we choose to. And right now, I think one of the big things that we don't think a lot about is the right to vote. In case you've been watching anything on the news, on TV, in the paper, there's a little thing called an election going on, and we want to be sure that individuals who are in long-term care have the right to exercise their rights in order to be able to vote. But we also know that COVID is one of those issues that is really having a negative impact on our residents in long-term care. So we want to find out, what is the state doing to balance that? So I am very excited to introduce to you the Secretary of State for the state of Rhode Island, Miss Nellie Gorbea. Welcome, Secretary.
Hi, good morning, Deb. It's great to be here.
Yes, thank you for joining me. I know now it's got to be like a crazy busy time for you.
It is, but this is exactly what I need to be doing, which is communicating with Rhode Islanders about, the voting information, the information that's going to allow them to vote. Because we want to make sure that in a crazy cycle like this one, where you've got a lot of noise, that you go to trusted sources of information for voting.
Yes. And, RA Elder Info prides itself in being a trusted resource for information. So we like to go right to the people who know. So can you tell me what is being done to ensure that individuals in long-term care, the nursing homes and the assisted living facilities, are able to vote?
Absolutely. So in some ways, the things that many have been using are still in place. The emergency mail ballot process. What's changed somewhat is there are a lot of the longer care facilities or senior centers that used to be polling locations that are no longer polling locations.
Yes.
And so that, if anything, is the biggest change. So if you're a senior who's living in a high rise and you're used to come down to vote on election day, you may find that polling location has been moved. So that is the number one thing to figure out. Are you a person who used to vote in person on election day at your building? Then you need to figure out where that polling location has moved to and make a plan for voting. And that's something that we're all doing this cycle, is we're all making plans on how we're going to vote. Talk to your activities director, or you can go to vote.ri.gov, which is our voter information center. And there you put in your address and you can figure out what your polling location is. Or if you put your first name, last name, date of birth, and the zip code where you're registered, you can find also your voting information and find out where you go to vote. You can even see a sample ballot. So that's for people who are used to voting in person. By the way, right now, you can also vote early in person at your city or town hall. So if you've got a trip where you're going into town, why not get your voting done? And I know that there's a lot of craziness in terms of people see the news from other states and that there's 5-hour lines and there's all this craziness. Not in Rhode Island. In Rhode Island, it's running really smoothly. In fact, it is, I'm going to look up my numbers. It is so smooth that we've already had 56,907 early voters this cycle.
Wow, that's a lot. How many registered voters are there in Rhode Island?
There are around 790,000 registered voters.
Mm-hmm.
And usually for a presidential election, we'll get about 60% of them to come out and vote. That was the last sort of number from like 2016. So I'm fully expecting that half of the voters actually will have voted early or by mail in this cycle, which is great because it leaves November 3rd much more easily socially distant. You don't have crowds. This is all about making sure that you don't have to choose between your right to vote and your health.
Yes,
so giving you options.
That is great. So one of the things you mentioned is the senior centers and a lot of the high rises are no longer polling places, and there's a lot of people who are asking why. Who makes those decisions? Is it the owners of the high rises who make that decision, or is it your office? How is that chosen?
Ultimately, it's the owner of the high rise. Okay. The board of canvassers, but the decisions around polling locations are made by the local boards of canvassers.
Okay.
In collaboration with the state board of elections. So my office doesn't actually have a role to play in this, other than we try to get the information out to people. The point here is, so the local board of canvassers may go and approach a high rise and say, hey, we'd love to have a polling location in your cafeteria this day. And they'll say, now because of COVID and all the concerns, they'll say, we don't feel we can take that risk of having a number of people, even though polling locations, I will say this, they've taken a lot of care and they've worked with the Rhode Island Emergency Management Agency to make sure that we've got, personal protective equipment for poll workers. There's gloves, there's face masks, there's the shields, there's plexiglass. There's actually a new position for poll workers, which is the sanitizing person. So every time somebody votes at one of the tables, somebody comes in and wipes the table and all the surfaces down. But, in a facility where you have seniors, I can understand still not wanting to take that risk. And that's what's happened, is that the owners of the facilities have told the local boards of canvassers, we don't feel comfortable, which has made the local boards of canvassers then have to find other alternative locations. Now, they can't just choose any location. The location has to be then approved by the Board of Elections. And things like, the Rhode Island Commission on Disabilities will come in to make sure that it really is accessible to all voters.
Excellent. So the population who live in nursing homes and assisted living facilities, but really nursing homes, in the past, bipartisan election officials would go in and be able to collect individuals' ballots and help them. I think many individuals don't realize voting is your right, just like your right to free speech, just your right to life. It is a fundamental right, and it can't be taken away, including, individuals who may have some forms of disability, whether that be a cognitive impairment or a physical impairment. But this year, their rights are not being taken away, but I'm wondering, how are those votes being facilitated in the nursing homes?
Sure. Again, because of the COVID pandemic, we have to do things a little bit differently. And so it's my understanding that this year, the Board of Elections is deputizing people in the care facilities themselves, so that the Board of Elections will, and these deputized people drop off the ballots. And many of the activities directors are helping out. So if you have a question about that, if you need a ballot yourself delivered to you, then you should talk to your activity director or the person in charge so that they can facilitate this. Another option is that there is a way in which you can do an emergency mail ballot where you can deputize, say, a loved one to go and pick up the ballot for you and bring it to you. But there's a special form that has to be filled out for that. And so, again, I really recommend that you speak to your activities director, who I know can get you the form and make sure that this happens.
Yeah, the activities directors are amazing. They're doing tremendous work
Yeah.
around this. And so, for individuals maybe who might be in the hospital, you can deputize somebody to come and pick up your ballot. But, we hear, like you said earlier, a lot of noise on TV. That doesn't give somebody the right to fill out your ballot for you,
No,
right?
it absolutely does not. If you are capable physically of filling out your ballot, you should do that yourself. You should do that privately.
Mhm.
You can then put it into the envelope. Then you have to fill out the form on the envelope. And then once it's sealed, then you would give it to that person. Make sure it's sealed.
We do hear a tremendous amount of noise about voter fraud and ballots getting lost and thrown in the trash and put in rivers and lots of things.
Yeah.
Is voter fraud a real concern in Rhode Island? Is it happening here, or are our ballots safe?
I will say that what we all share is a concern that the Rhode Island election be held with as much integrity as is absolutely possible. Integrity is never something that we want to question or that we want to somehow cut corners on and may affect it. So absolutely, I can tell you for a fact that voter fraud in Rhode Island over the last, I'm going to say, decades, like a couple of decades, this has not been something that has been proven to have happened in Rhode Island. There's a lot of talk about it, but there are a lot of checks and balances that people don't realize when they talk about it. And when you hear stuff happening in another state, you have to understand every state runs their elections differently. Mm-hmm. So I am not going to comment on, sort of another state because they have counties, they've got other setups. I can tell you that in Rhode Island, between the advances and the modernization of technology that I've put into place in my time as Secretary of State, and all of the pre-existing checks and balances, elections are community activities. There's so many people involved in the running of an election. It is really, really hard to commit the kind of voter fraud that is proven and can be absolutely, and then we go after. So if you have any concerns about that, call my office. We'll walk you through what are those safeguards. Don't take, some talking heads statement about voter fraud for a fact. It's not.
Can you give some examples of what some of the checks and balances are? And obviously you can't talk about all of them because they're, secret to make sure that there's checks and balances. But if there's something that you could share with us that reassures people.
So one of the things that people might not realize about the mail ballot system in Rhode Island is that at the core of the security of the mail ballot is the signature of the voter. It's not in the old days who was witnessing them or anything like that. It's the signature. So when you apply for a mail ballot or an emergency mail ballot, in this case that we're talking about, the signature that you sign that document with is going to be verified personally by a local election official in your town hall. And they're going to say, yep, Susie Smith's signature matches the one on the voter card that we have in the voter registration database. Then that person gets approved and they get sent a ballot. The ballot comes with a second form, which is on that envelope, the oath envelope. And Susie fills out her form again and she signs it. And there's actually a provision there to either, as an option, voluntarily, either you can put the last 4 digits of your social or your driver's license or state ID number. The reason there is, if you're registered as Susan Smith and forgot, and you're now signing Sue Smith, but those numbers and the rest of the information matches, then that's approved. But if you don't, then they'll kind of contact you because it has to match the voter's signature in the central voter registration system. That oath envelope and ballot goes to the Board of Elections. A state level election official is now going to verify that that voter's signature matches the database. So you have different sets of eyes in different places verifying that the voter is who the voter is. And they will hold ballots if the signatures don't match. And what happens then is they try to contact the voter, and the voter has 7 days in which to cure, is what we call it, the oath envelope or the application.
Holy cow.
Yep.
I know when it comes to registering for votes, and I don't know if this information is even available, but at the end of the Medicaid long-term services and supports application is a voter registration and voter update. Do you know how many people actually take advantage of that option?
So I don't know. What I can tell you though is just yesterday, I was at the grocery store and an older woman approached me and said, "Oh my goodness, is it too late to register to vote?" And the answer is yes, for this election for the full ballot, but we do have same day voter registration. If in Rhode Island, if you go to city or town hall on November 3rd, you can register to vote, but the ballot that you'll be given is only for president and vice president. You won't be given town council or city council. You won't be given, the rest of the other options or the referenda question, for example.
Okay, so you'll have the ability, even on the day of, if you would like to cast your ballot for the president, you can go to town hall and register.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
So I saw something in the media that maybe Monday or Tuesday, your office got like 18,000 ballots. I can't even, that would like fill my kitchen. How do you guys handle all that?
Well, actually, so my office processed 177,000 mail ballot applications. And luckily and by processing, I mean received it, sorted it by community, opened it, unfolded it, and then scanned it so that the local boards of canvassers could then access the application to verify the contents. So we actually enlisted the Rhode Island National Guard to help us with just the sorting and opening. Just even that helped us tremendously. And so that's the thing. Elections are a team sport. And that's really what we have to do. We're all in this together. And the goal is that every Rhode Island voter has access to the ballot and keeps their health and doesn't have to choose between the two.
Yeah, this has been great. I just have they started to be counted yet, or
yes,
they have?
We have. Okay, so every person, every one of those early voters that I just talked about, the 56,900.
Yep.
They, as soon as they put their ballot into the tabulator, it gets counted, but nobody knows how the count is going because that's locked into the computer database. So what'll happen is on November 3rd, the 39 cities and towns each will have their early voting machines. They will finalize the closing of that machine, and it'll spit out the receipt and it'll transmit the unofficial results by 10. The Board of Elections is asking that those be sent by 10 p.m. on election night. The ones that are at polling locations would be coming in as soon as the polls close and there is an accounting that the voting has ended. Then at that point, those results come in wirelessly, unofficially. And then the mail ballots, that's the Board of Elections is still trying to decide whether they're going to release the numbers. So for mail ballots, anything that gets processed before election day gets put into this massive machine that's doing 10,000 counts. It's a pile, right? And then the pile gets processed. Again, that machine holds the count without revealing what's going on. And for those of you who may have heard something about, wireless transmissions and things like that, again, these are unofficial results that are being sent. And we always have the golden standard of elections, the paper ballot. And in Rhode Island, we have risk limiting post-election audits, which will verify that what the machines were counting was exactly what's in those paper ballots. So there's so many ways in which we check and double check and triple check to make sure that in the end, you will know that whatever the numbers are the numbers.
That's great. And with the early voting, is there if I were to say, if I wanted to vote early and then go to my poll and vote again, is that possible?
That's again another great example of how technology has helped us. The answer is no, you will not be allowed to vote because you have been tagged already as a mail ballot voter. And if you show up and you say, but I didn't get my mail ballot, or I can't find it, then the poll worker will, because you're marked in the electronic poll book, which is tied to this database, you will then be given a ballot, but you will not be allowed to put it into the machine with all the other ones. You will be given a provisional envelope, and you will have to fill that out, explain why you're there, because either you didn't get it or whatever, or you think that you never applied, there's been a mistake, and you have to fill that form out. You put your voted ballot inside of that form, and those ballots are the last ones to be counted because they'll make sure that there's no other ballot by this person in the system, and before they count that ballot.
So someone, Chad Morrison, has asked a question. He said, early voting is already in progress, yet last night was the final debate. Does the debate schedule need to be changed, or does election day need to be moved or expanded?
So we have expanded it since election day by the fact that we're allowing early voting. That's a really interesting question, Chad. I think that the people who end up voting early are those that are pretty much have set up their minds. I don't know that another debate is necessarily going to change it. If you're that uncertain, those people who are uncertain may wait until the last minute to cast their ballot, and that's okay. We're just trying to manage the crowds so that come November 3rd, given how much interest there is in this election, which is great, by the way. I mean, my goal as Secretary of State was to get more people voting, and the silver lining to this horrible, horrible pandemic has been being able to provide people more opportunities to vote and seeing higher voter turnouts. I think what's great about it is that we'll be able to see which parts of this we like so much that we want to make into law. But early in-person voting, 20 days before the election, absolutely is here to stay because there was a law that was changed for that.
Wow. How many people, what percentage of the population usually does vote?
So it varies a lot by election.
Okay.
I've seen local council elections, like for a replacement, be as low as 9%, 6% of the voting, population, which again speaks to, I don't think we're delivering elections in a way that are accessible. People are basically making a cost-benefit analysis between, wow, like I've got a ton of stuff to do, or I've got to go vote in this one location on this one day. So I'm hoping to think about things like mail ballots for these very small elections, because the expense that the town goes through for special elections is fairly considerable. So there's that at one end. And then there's the presidentials, which you get as much as 60%. And I think a lot of that is driven by all the media attention. When we have our constitutional officers, governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state elections, which is in 2 years, that tends to be more, there tends to be a drop off to around 40, somewhere between 40, 44%.
Wow.
And again, I think it's because of the media. You don't have CNN talking about the gubernatorial race in Rhode Island, but everybody locally is. So it's amazing how much power media has in helping motivate people to vote. Even though, in my office, we've done a lot to get the word out.
Wow. Yeah. Yes, you absolutely have. So if any of the facilities that might be watching, if they needed some help to help the residents of the nursing homes, the assisted living, make sure that they're able to vote. I have Jennifer Reagan at the Board of Elections as the contact. Is that still correct? Or is there someone else that they should reach out to?
And so you would want to check with Barbara Posa. I am not up to speed because that's a separate agency. And so we've all been so swamped within our own worlds. I mean, we communicate a lot, but I don't know where their staffing is at this point. I'm sorry to say. Although I may try to get somebody to try to answer this really quickly.
Okay.
My staff is gonna, my staff Nick is who's listening to this. Will try to get us the answer before we turn off. But I
Yes.
will tell you this: we have a new tools to engage your community on vote.ri.gov with ready posters and memes and language that you can just drop into a flyer. And so please, please, please use it. I'm gonna try to.
And that's on the social media, right, for the Secretary of State's office?
No, that's on the internet at
Okay.
vote.ri.gov.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So, I just want to make sure I've got everything. So the activities directors are really key for the nursing homes. Really important that, you can mail in votes and you have literally National Guard helping to open those envelopes and unfold the papers. And
that piece already happened. So we're done.
Good.
We're done. And the Board of Elections, which is now doing the mail ballots, the 100 and more, well, that's already I think they'd received as of yesterday, 100 and they've processed about over 100,000. They have a ton of staff that they've hired to manage that.
Awesome. So we can do our mail-in votes. We can do our in-person votes. There's lots of checks and balances to make sure our votes are safe. We'd like to get above 60% for voters. That would be awesome. I think it's more than 60% complain about whatever election is going on. So I think if you're going to complain, then you got to be part of the process, have your voice heard.
And really, this is a historic election. It's really key that all of our voices be heard.
Yes, yes, yes. And I think, it's safe. Rhode Island seems like it's doing a great job in getting everything secure, getting the word out. I just hope everybody does vote. Secretary Gorbea, I really appreciate you taking the time. Go ahead.
The last thing that I want to mention to people, there's a lot of very inflammatory news out there. Take a deep breath before you forward it. Make sure that it's covered in multiple media outlets, not from the left, not from the right, but everybody is there is a lot that we can do to keep the election from being manipulated by foreign adversaries that are absolutely trying to get to us. And so I hope that, between going to trusted sources of information like your activities director, my office, the Board of Elections, your local boards of canvassers, ask them those questions that you're coming up with so that you have the right information and you can be assured that Rhode Island elections are being run right and that you can trust that your vote will be counted.
I think that's a great place to end. This is great. I really appreciate you taking the time. We even went a little longer than what I had said your office would be, and I appreciate you staying with us. I'm really glad that you were able to join us today, Secretary.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. So I just want to remind everybody, if you have a loved one in long-term care, they have the right to vote as well. If you are an individual in long-term care and you maybe are having any questions or concerns about voting, you can always reach out to the Secretary's office. You can also reach out to the Disability Rights Office. Kate Bowden is the contact there. Her number is 401-831-3150. The other option is you can reach out to Lorena Nardi or Kathleen Herron at the Office of the Rhode Island Long-Term Care Ombudsman. Their number is 785-3340. Very important that you vote. It is one of our fundamental rights. If you want to have a word about what is going on in our country, you can have that word with your vote. So I encourage everybody, get out and vote. If you're going out to the polling place, wear your mask, social distance, use your hand sanitizer, but have your voice heard in your vote. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to the Secretary's office. Thank you all for joining me. If you have any questions, concerns, you want to learn more, you can always visit RA Elder Info. You have a great day. Bye-bye.